Hello, this is Suchadatta, SST teacher, and now picking up the first chapter of class 9, Democracy in Contemporary World. Democracy is the most popular government in today's time. It is a government wherein people are the most important element. It is the government wherein the people are the rulers and the ruled. It is the government wherein people give the verdict. It is the government by which the policies are made by the people and the people get affected by the policies that they have made. So, it is the best form of government that one can think of because we are both at the ruling and the ruled end. That means we are answerable. It also means that we are the ones who are the policy makers. But before we start with the chapter, let's learn about the new terms. The first is censorship. The word censorship is associated with press. It in fact means that the government has hold over the writings, articles, news in the newspapers and magazines, and the government's approval is essential for the publication of these articles. Next is coalition. Coalition means when two organizations or rather two political parties or more than that form a government. It is a government of convenience, or in fact it is a matter of short time when they actually have coalition, they join together to form a government. And in India, a system of coalitions has actually started developing too much after the year 1990. Next is colony. Colony means when a big powerful country conquers another country and starts having direct and indirect influence on that country is called as a colony. India was a colony of Britain, but the period of colonization has now come to an end and most of the countries in the world are independent. Next is communist state. Communist state is that country wherein one political party is very important. It has all the powers and it does not let any other country, any other party flourish, and it is when this particular party or the state has control over all the big factories and other means of production. People become secondary and it is the government which is the most important part of the country. Next is coup. Coup means when there is a sudden change in the government. That is to say that somebody replaces the present government by violence or non-violence is called as coup. Coup is a French word which actually means sudden blow or strike to a government. Generally, coup are done by military dictators. Next is martial law. After a coup comes the state of martial law, wherein the military dictator takes all the power in his hands and he becomes all in all. Next we have referendum. Referendum is a direct voting system by which we try to find out whether the people are in favor or against a particular decision being taken. The next term is trade union. Trade union means an association of the workers by which they see that the working conditions are stable or can be improved. Next is veto. Veto is a Latin word which means I forbid. This in fact means a person, an organization, a state or a country has a power to go against the decision taken by the rest of the people. That is to say, whatever I decide is right. So, this word in fact is used more in the UN, wherein 5 permanent members have the veto right. Next is democracy. Democracy is a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's revolving around the people and people alone. Dictatorship. Dictatorship is the rule of one man, wherein whatever he says is absolutely right and is the law for the nation. Next is solidarity. Solidarity, this word actually began when a trade union was formed, and this movement or union was led by Lech Wałęsa in a communist rule in Poland, wherein private trade organizations or unions were forbidden. This solidarity led to an end to the communist government in Poland. Next is UNO. UNO or the United Nations Organization was formed in the year 1945. This organization is responsible for maintaining peace, solidarity, unity and integrity between the various nations of the world. By UNO, we try to maintain peace all around in the world. Next is WTO, that is World Trade Organization. This was formed in the year 1955 and this is responsible for promoting trade in the world. Next is decolonization. The word opposite of colonization is decolonization. If there was an era of colonization when actually the Industrial Revolution took place, then came the era of decolonization. That is, most of the Asian and the African countries started becoming independent of their master countries. That is, they sought and they got freedom and were free from the clutches of their European masters, is better termed as decolonization. Now, let's know about various famous personalities whose name we are going to see in the chapter again and again. The first name is Ande, though the spelling is different, but it is pronounced as Ende. Ende was the founder of the Chilean Socialist Party and he was made the president in 1970 of the country, and he did number of reforms in the country, but he was overthrown in a coup by the General Pincho. So next we will know about the General Augusto Pincho. General Augusto Pincho was the one who actually did a coup in the country, Chile, on 11th September 1973 and established a full-fledged dictatorship in the country. Lech Walesa. Lech Walesa is the person who formed the Solidarity, that is the trade union in a nation where private trade unions were forbidden, and it gave a revolutionary change in the country. Next is Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah was one of the leading freedom strugglers of Ghana. Next is Aung San Suu Kyi. He was the leader of the National League of Democracy and was put under house arrest and was released recently, but won the Nobel Peace Prize in the year 1991. So these were the famous personalities about whom we shall be referring in the chapter. Now let's start with the chapter, and the first country that we shall be visiting is Chile. In this country, Chile, and there, the then president was very generous, nice and popular amongst his people. He was the leader of the Socialist Party of Chile, and when he became the president, he made number of reforms in his country. He saw that there were reforms in the education, and free milk was distributed amongst the poor children, and he also redistributed the land among the landless farmers. He was also against the foreign companies who were taking away the natural resources like copper from Chile. But there were people like the big landlords and also the church which turned against Allende. Therefore, a coup took place in Chile on 11th September 1973. And when the coup started and the president was aware of what was coming, he gave his speech on the radio which said, "Workers of my land, I am sure of my country and of the country's future. I know this bitter movement or moment in the history of Chile shall pass away. We shall again restore back the peace in the country. I know the efforts and the sacrifice that I shall make shall not go in vain. So my workers who are my strength shall rise against all the atrocities that the dictatorial government is trying to impose in the country." By the word sacrifice, he meant that his own death, and this was exactly what was there in store. When the coup took place, the then defense minister was captured and the president was forced to resign. When he refused, he was killed, and Augusto Pinochet became the dictator or the military dictator of Chile, thereby destroying the peaceful and the popular government of the country, and ruled for the next 17 years. Now, this coup in Chile was supported by the US government because they disliked the previous government. And after the dictatorship was established in Chile, there were certain measures which were taken, that is, all those people who supported and opposed the present government, that is, supporters of the previous government, and the people who opposed the present government were tortured and killed. There were some like General Alberto Pechot, who was the head of the Air Force, was killed, and his wife and daughter were put in house arrest. When the general ruled for 17 years and thought that he had become powerful enough to do whatever he felt in the country, he ordered for a referendum in the year 1988. And this changed the fate of the general, because the general was sure that the people are going to support him and the verdict is going to be in his favor. But alas, it did not turn out to be. The people said no to the present government, and then they remembered the speech which the earlier president had given on air, wherein he said that the felony, cowardice and treason shall one day surpass. So, after the government lost the support, it was an end to the dictatorial and the military rule in Chile. An inquiry was set up against the government, which found the government to be corrupt and brutal. Michele Bachelet, that is the daughter of General Alberto, the then head of the Air Force, was elected the president of Chile in 2006. She became the first woman to become a defense minister in the country, in the Latin American countries. Now, when she actually became overpowerful, or when she actually came in power, she just said these words, and the words were, "I was in fact the victim of hatred, so my life is dedicated now to reverse hatred and see to it that now there is understanding, love and tolerance in the country." So this marked the beginning of democracy in Chile, that is the popular government in Chile. This is one example that we have seen how the government changed in one of the Latin American countries. We've seen the example of Chile. Now we shall be moving to the story of Poland, one of the Eastern European countries, in the year 1980. At that time, Polish United Workers' Party was ruling in Poland, and it was a communist government, and the big communist country USSR supported this government in Poland. It so happened that on 14th August 1980, at the Lenin shipyard in the city called Zandik, a strike of the workers began. It was against the dismissal of the crane operator, who was a woman, and they felt that she had been illegally dismissed. The communist government did not allow any strikes, any trade worker unions or organizations. So this was considered to be highly illegal and going against the government. Lech Wałęsa, who was the former electrician of the shipyard, who had been dismissed because he had asked for higher salary, now became the leader of this strike. This strike took such a big turn that the government had to actually listen to what they were saying, and the country nearly overturned. A 21-point program was signed between the workers and the government, wherein trade unions were legalized, wherein the workers could demand for what they felt was right. That is, the workers now had a better say. The first kind of the trade unions in Poland, called the Solidarity, was formed, wherein crores and crores of people joined this organization. The then General Jaruzelski, he realized that the situation was out of control, so he imposed a martial law in the year 1989. But this also could not actually win the favor or go in favor of the president, because the people had become very tough and they negotiated and fought against the general. Again, a term agreement had to be signed between the government and the people, by wherein it was decided to have elections in the country. When the elections took place in 1989, surprisingly, out of the 100 seats, 99 seats were won by the Solidarity, which clearly meant that the next president of the country was Felicia, the person who had headed this organization. So there was restored democracy in Poland, a popular government which the people had been aspiring and demanding since many years. Now, we shall move on to the story of the restoration of democracy and the popularity of democracy in the world. There are two phases to this. One is the beginning and other is the recent phase. When I talk of the beginning phase, we must understand that in fact the roots of democracy were laid in France. When the French Revolution took place in the year 1789, it so happened that the then monarch Louis XVI and his wife Marie Antoinette were killed, and France gave a popular slogan to the world, which was liberty, equality and fraternity. Everybody in the world started aspiring for these three golden words, and they knew that this is in fact what is required by all the nations all over the world. People everywhere started demanding universal adult franchise, that is right to vote, which means all people, irrespective of caste, color, creed or sex, must have the right to vote. Especially the blacks, who did not enjoy the voting right in America, picked up this issue. So, the French Revolution in fact had created the seeds of democracy for the world. Now, we see that the end of colonialism or decolonization was another factor which played a remarkable role in the beginning phase of establishing democracy. When India got independence in the year 1947 from Britain, it was a glorious movement. Similar was the condition in other countries of Asia and Africa, wherein they started slowly becoming independent of the European masters. This meant that they were restoring the popular democracy in their respective countries. This also means that the people had realized that self-rule, and that too when they had established their own government, was the best kind of democracy or the government that people can have. Well, the big boast of Britain, that the sun never sets in Britain, was slowly collapsing. We also see an example of Ghana, a colony of Britain which was called as the Gold Coast. This country became independent in the year 1957. Van Nkrumah, who was the son of a goldsmith and a teacher by profession, led the popular resistance movement in Ghana. First of all, he became the Prime Minister of the country, and later on he became the President and slowly turned to be a dictator. He was a great friend of Jawaharlal Nehru, but unlike Nehru, who established a true democracy in India, he elected himself as a lifetime president. But in 1966, he was overthrown by a coup, which means that in Ghana there was end of colonialism, restoration of democracy, once again end of democracy, and a popular struggle for democracy, which indicates that these struggles can be different in different countries. We have seen the earlier phase of democracy. Let's move to the recent phase. As far as the recent phase is concerned, most of the Latin American countries have struggled and established democracy. And all this has been made possible because of the disintegration of the Soviet Union. As the Soviet Union helped and promoted communist government in these countries. If we look at the countries around us, that is our neighbors, then Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, all these countries have established democracies. Of course, there have been certain hitches, but whether it is General Musharraf or it is the King of Nepal, they have played dirty in between. So we can say that in these countries there is democracy establishment and then a coup by a military dictator and restoration of democracy led again by some coup, which means they have yet to establish a permanent democratic government in their country, that is a stable democracies. If we take the example of one country, Myanmar, which was earlier called as Burma, it became independent in the year 1948 and established democracy in the country. Till the year 1962, it was a democratic country, but then a coup took place and a military dictator became the head of the country. Again, the elections were held in 1990, wherein the National League for Democracy, headed by Aung San Suu Kyi, won the elections. But the irony was that after winning elections too, the previous military government, the dictatorial government, did not let it come to power. and she was put under house arrest. But she continued her campaign from there itself, and the people became uprooted from their homes. They had to run away here and there. There has been a struggle, a movement, looking forward to a popular government democracy, but still democracy has not been established in Myanmar. Of course, the efforts of Aung San Suu Kyi have paid some results in the form of her winning the Nobel Peace Prize. But this is in fact the true example of many Asian countries which yet are looking forward to establishing a strong, popular and stable democracy in the country. We have seen the two phases of democracy and the establishment of democracies in various countries of the world. But there is democracy in my country, there is democracy in your country. But do we actually have democracy in the world? What does this mean? This means that we must have international organizations which should be able to resolve the disputes in an amicable and democratic manner. For example, when I say that there are problems as far as the sea area is concerned, which belongs to none of the country, or environmental degradation which is troubling all of us, then who is going to question, who is going to decide, and will the people agree to the decisions? The United Nations has been made as a global association with the UN Secretary General as its administrative officer, who tries to solve all such disputes in an amicable manner. So this organization is believed to be the father organization which is trying to maintain peace, security and cooperation in the world. If supposing one country attacks another country in an unjust manner, then what is the solution? The UN Security Council can take a step forward and make a world army wherein it can ask all its members to give the army, and it can teach a lesson to the wrongdoer. Supposing a country needs money, then who is going to lend the money? The International Monetary Fund of the UN and the World Bank shall provide monetary assistance to all its members. This all seems very, very rosy. It seems as if there is a solution to all the problems. The UN is very powerful, it's a very just organization, and it is trying its best to solve the problems of the world. But we have to ponder and understand whether all the decisions taken by the UN are democratic. Try and understand that there are 192 members of the United Nations and they all have one vote in the General Assembly. Excellent. So that means all of us are deciding in the General Assembly on equal basis. But the other side of the coin, the most important Security Council, it has 5 permanent members: US, Russia, UK, France and China, which are the founder members of the UN, and they have the veto right. That is to turn the decision when everybody is wanting something and they are wanting something different. So, where is the equality? Where is the democracy? Where is the much required cooperation and peace in the world? Wherein even in the World Organization, the countries are discriminated on the permanent and the non-permanent members and they enjoy veto rights. Which means that the world is still looking forward to a strong international organization which is unbiased and which is equal in all its terms. So, we are still looking forward to democracy in the world relations. We were talking of the inequalities and irregularities in the present day world. And we were seeing that there are inequalities in the UN, there are inequalities in the Security Council, and now we must understand that the inequalities even in the International Monetary Fund. If there are inequalities, how can we think that the money would be distributed in an equal manner, in a just manner, in an unbiased manner? The International Monetary Fund has 185 members, but not all of them are on equal footing. You have more say, more strength in the organization depending upon how much contribution you have made to the International Monetary Fund. The 10 countries of the world, that is UK, Japan, Germany, France, US, China, Italy, Saudi Arabia, Canada and Russia have greater powers, greater say in the International Monetary Fund organization. The rest 175 countries are secondary. So, where is democracy in the world? Where is equality in the world? Wherein even when the money has to be distributed, there are people who have a greater say. To add to the woes, the president of the International Monetary Fund is always an American. That is, an American heads the International Monetary Fund, and this head is nominated also by the Finance Minister of America. So, it is strange and very strange that the world organizations are still lacking in democracy, wherein the world has moved forward in various countries in establishing, promoting and re-establishing democracies in the world. But unless we do not see, hear and actually practically have democracies in the world, we cannot have a true democracy. Democracy promotion, if I try and talk about, it has been also a very sorry state of affair. I am taking the example of Iraq, a country in West Asia. It became independent in the year 1932, and in the year 1968, there was a coup and Arab Socialist Baath Party became the head of the country. The word Baath means renaissance, a new age, reformation. Saddam Hussein, the leader of the Arab Socialist Baath Party, he gave number of reforms to the country. He gave voting right to the women, and he went against the Islamic traditions and tried to establish a better government in the country. Of course, before he actually established himself, he had been a very, very harsh dictator who killed innumerable people, was very, very strong and supposed to be unjust towards the people who opposed his move. Saddam Hussein's government was not liked, or US and Britain were suspicious of Saddam Hussein. So they said that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons in the country, which could be a total threat to the peace of the world. A UN team in 2003, a UN team went to inspect the Iraq country, but they found nothing. But in 2003, this government was removed. That is, Saddam Hussein was totally out of scene because the US and UK were against him. And immediately after his removal, an interim government was formed in Iraq, which was pro them. And the then head of the UN, Kofi Annan, was against this move of both the countries, UK and US, against Iraq, and criticized this attack as unjust and illegal. But he was helpless and could do nothing against these two member countries, which means there is still a long way wherein an organization in the world can have a true hold on various countries, their moves, and bring about equality, a just society in the world. That's all about democracy in the world. Thank you.